Welcome to AP Psychology, Topic 2.3, Introduction to Memory, Daily Video 1. In this video, we will define, differentiate, and practice identifying explicit and implicit memories and analyze a study on explicit memory recall. My name is Marisa Del Savio, and I teach at Walt Whitman High School in Bethesda, Maryland. There are different types of memories. I'd like you to demonstrate this by you engaging in this first task. I'd like you to tell me about the best birthday party you've ever been to or ever had. Where was it? Who was there? And what gifts did you get? And I imagine this is a pretty easy task for you. But how about this? For task 2, I want you to tell me how to climb a flight of stairs. This is a little bit more difficult. And what we're demonstrating here is the difference between an explicit and an implicit memory. For that first task, you likely explicitly recalled all the details of that experience. And in the second task, it was much harder because you really implicitly know how to climb a set of stairs. Explicit memories are also known as declarative memories, and they include episodic, semantic, and perspective. And these are memories that we recall with conscious awareness. And then we have implicit memories, which are known as non-declarative memories. They include procedural, classically conditioned responses, and primed responses. And these are recalled without conscious awareness. If we look at explicit memories and we look at episodic, these memories are specific to our unique personal experiences. Each and every one of us has our own personal memories. Semantic memories are information we know and that we've learned. They could be facts about the world and our understandings about the way things work. And when it comes to perspective memories, that's really remembering to remember. It's the memory of an intent to perform a specific action. I'm going to use an example here, and the example I'm going to start with an explicit memory is the first time my mother made salmon for dinner. I recall this memory very well. We were in Eugene, Oregon, and she put this pink fish on a plate, and I can tell you all about that day. But I also have semantic memories about salmon. I know a lot about salmon, that they swim upstream to spawn, for example. And then there are perspective memories. I've been talking to you about salmon, and actually now I'm kind of hungry for it. So I have to go remember to buy salmon for dinner tonight. Now, when it comes to implicit or non-declarative memories, those include procedural memories, knowing how to do something. Classically conditioned responses. These are associations that we've learned that might evoke some kind of an emotional or a physiological response. And then there are primed responses. Exposure to one thing may unconsciously influence our future thoughts or behaviors. And by way of example, let's take a look at this. Procedural. Knowing how to brush my teeth is a procedural memory, kind of like buttoning your shirt or climbing up a flight of stairs. Classically conditioned response. In this example, I might feel anxious about an upcoming dental appointment. I associate a dentist with painful teeth cleaning, and I kind of wince every time I think about going to the dentist. And finally, for primed responses, I go out to buy mouthwash after going to the dentist, and I'm at the store and unaware that I've been exposed to many advertisements for a particular brand. I actually select that brand off the shelf. So we're going to practice here. What we're going to do is I'm going to read these off to you and then give you an opportunity to pause and then try to do the matching activity. What we have here is our first ticket that you might be getting. Somebody buttoning their shirt, a skateboard, which you know takes balance, the need to make cookies, and then another example here where a person isn't sure whether or not it's soup or soap that comes at the end of a list, depending upon the words in the list. So take a moment and pause, and then start the video again when you're ready to look at the answers. Our first ticket is an example of an explicit episodic memory. It's something you can tell me all about. You can give me the details of that. Buttoning the shirt, like climbing stairs, is an implicit procedural memory. It's how to do something. We know that it takes balance to ride a skateboard. That is an explicit semantic memory. And needing to make cookies and knowing you need to make cookies is an example of an explicit perspective memory. And in our final example, if I were to read to you bread, juice, milk, and ask you what the next word was, you were likely primed by bread, juice, milk, and you would say soup. But of course, if you were primed with towel, shower, shampoo, You might say that the last word is soap. We're going to continue with some practice, and this is a study on explicit memory recall. We're looking at the impact of acute exercise on explicit memory recall, where 200 students from an introductory psychology class at the University of Monroe took part in a study that sought to determine whether participants who engaged in acute exercise prior to learning would perform better on a recall task than participants who did not exercise. Our hypothesis here is that participants engaging in acute exercise prior to learning will perform better on a recall task than those not performing any exercise. So that's a lot of information, but let's take a look at this study and ask, what is our null hypothesis? If you recall, a null hypothesis would be that the independent variable has no effect on our dependent variable. Engaging in acute exercise prior to learning will not impact performance on a recall task. Let's try to identify the independent variable and the dependent variable, remembering that the independent variable is manipulated and the dependent variable is being measured. In this study, our independent variable is acute exercise, and we are measuring our dependent variable, which is recall. The researchers randomly assigned participants into control and experimental groups. One group engaged in acute exercise for 35 minutes as measured by their heart rate, and the other group rested for 35 minutes in a quiet room. What were the control group conditions? What were the experimental group conditions? The control group is not exposed to the independent variable, and this is the group that rested quietly for 35 minutes, whereas the experimental group engaged in the acute exercise for 35 minutes. As we look at the procedures, the researcher, after having the students either sit for 35 minutes quietly or exercising, they were given a list of 20 words, and they were instructed to place those words in alphabetical order. And the researchers did not want the participants to rehearse the words. They didn't really want them to know that this was a research study on memory and exercise. So they gave them another task to do, and it was called a Stroop task. And it was basically a distractor task. It divides their attention. And if you've ever seen a Stroop test, you're asked to read the color of the word, not the word itself. So in my example below here, what you see is I would ask you to give me the color of the first word, which is blue. And I'd have to go blue, white, and it's hard. It's definitely a distracting task, and that's a Stroop test. And that prevented the participants from rehearsing those 20 words that they were given. After a 5-minute rest period, participants were asked to write down all the words they recalled from the original list of 20 words. Data was collected, and the mean from each group was compared. As we can see here, there was an effect on the effect of exercise on recall. The mean words recalled is presented on the y-axis, and the type of exercise, whether there was none or no exercise or exercise, is presented here on the x-axis. And we have a p-value. The p-value is equal to 0.03. That demonstrates statistically significant results. What p-value is, and what it says to us, is that there is a 3% probability that these results occurred by chance. So pretty much any p-value under 0.05 would indicate that there are statistically significant results. In other words, the difference between no exercise and exercise, and the results that were gathered are clearly different. And again, that's just about a 3% probability that these results occurred by chance. So what kind of study was this? There was a hypothesis. The independent variable was manipulated. Participants were randomly assigned to either a control or an experimental group. The dependent variable was measured. And this looks very much like an experiment. With experiments, we can make causal statements. We can come to the conclusion that acute exercise prior to learning does indeed enhance recall. So what do we take away? Memories that we consciously recall are called explicit or declarative memories. Implicit or non-declarative memories are those that are made without conscious awareness. We reviewed a study on recall of explicit memory and determined that the study was a true experiment by identifying the elements that would permit the the researchers to make cause and effect statements. Thank you.